Bernie Sanders had a pretty good weekend, admittedly, since he crushed Hillary Clinton in all three of the caucuses that went on. Why don't we first show you the results of each one? Here is Washington.
Bam! Look at that.
72.7%.
72.7%. Sounds like an FM station, not a percentage you would get, right? Exactly. So high of a percentage.
That's a very high percent. I mean, you don't normally see blowouts of that sort. Considering how big Washington is, it's not a lot of total voters for Washington, but it is a caucus. It's not a primary, so that's necessarily going to lower the number of people you get. I hope that the mainstream media bears that in mind when they control for total number of votes. I have a feeling they won't. But here's Alaska. If you liked 72.7%, how do you like 81.6?
81.6 FM.
Yeah.
Here's the Bern.
I was told that Sanders only does well in very liberal places, but perhaps Alaska, where there aren't many liberals, according to 538's logic, they'll become more liberal because they're isolated.
Maybe that's it.
That's a gigantic blowout. Again, it's a caucus, so low turnout in total, but blowout.
I've been to Alaska plenty.
Yeah?
And let me tell you something.
Looks lovely.
Cold.
It does seem a bit cold.
They're not kidding around with the cold up there.
Yeah, maybe they lured people into caucus by having something warm to put your hands near.
I bet you. I was there, no kidding. This is a true story, John. Stop me if I told you before. It's 42 below zero when I was there.
Really?
42. When it has to warm up 70 degrees just to fucking freeze.
That doesn't sound tolerable.
That's cold.
Good job. Good job. Were you there for a show?
Yes, I went there to see
for fun.
I went to see the ice fog.
To see puffins.
I did get to see the Northern Lights, though, if you know what those are.
I have heard of them, actually. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see if you like the climate in this state a little bit better. This is the Hawaii caucus, the final one. It took about 25 extra hours to come in, but almost cracking 70% there.
Wow.
And
it's funny you say cracking because he had 69%.
There you go. So 69.8% to 30% is actually the closest result in any of the three caucuses going on. Now, look, we understand that he generally does better in caucuses, although not universally. He lost the first caucus that happened in Iowa. But nobody was expecting blowouts of this sort, especially not in Washington, where it was contested, Alaska, where there was almost no polling, and Hawaii, where there was no polling. So anybody telling you that, well, obviously he was going to win here is lying to you because they had no data to actually back that up. And definitely not that he was going to crush in gigantic numbers. Now, not a gigantic number of delegates up. Thankfully, Washington had slightly over 100. So he did actually narrow the gap slightly, like 10, 15%, I think. And here you have the current delegate count. Now, this is not including any of the superdelegates. And I have heard of at least one superdelegate switching over to Bernie Sanders. That is one of hundreds that need to do so, but that is something.
Well, let me put it another way. That is one of hundreds that will do so. When he takes the lead in the delegate count, which is going to happen on June 7th.
That's the biggest day ever. Now, bring that up really fast one more time. What you're going to see there is that she is up by slightly over 200 delegates, which is still, that's a very large amount. I mean, that's like California almost universally going for Bernie Sanders, or I think slightly more than New York going entirely. But it's not the gigantic gap that CNN insists on still including the 469 superdelegates. That is an attainable gap if he continues to dominate the way that he has, which is, that might be a little bit difficult. Because I did see a little bit of bad news. 538 looked ahead to the schedule, and I had not noticed this, but there are only 2 caucuses remaining. That's bad news, slightly. That does not mean that he can't catch up, but he does typically do better in caucuses. He's burned through a lot of caucuses recently. Wow. So in the same way that she can't rely on southern states anymore, he's not going to be able to rely on a ton of caucuses.
So what's interesting is that this guy just waylaid the shit out of the biggest political machine in the United States, waylaid the shit out of them, and Debbie Downer over here is telling you how it's not going to work out. I can't fucking believe you did that. Could you give me 15 seconds of enjoying this?
It's a warning. It's a warning for the future.
Cut it out. Everywhere else is warning me of
this. No, but see, don't worry, because I'm going to give you more to enjoy in just a second.
Oh, okay.
And no, I mean, look, I just finished saying nobody expected him to dominate in the way that he just did. It's amazing. It's exactly what he needed.
Nate Silver has different numbers.
What different numbers?
But for pledged delegates.
What does he have?
He has Hillary Clinton 1,267, Bernie Sanders 1,037.
Okay, so he's got a little bit more for both of them, which is actually slightly closer for Bernie. Now, people have been wondering, why is it that so few of the delegates from Washington have been allocated so far?
No.
Which is a good question.
Good
it's
question.
Complicated in a lot of
Stop
states.
asking us it on Twitter, though.
I got a lot of tweets about it. And at that point, I didn't know. And at that point, I was on vacation. So I was like, I'm not worrying about this right now. But it's because in a lot of states, they don't actually choose the particular delegates until they have elections slightly later on. Not elections that people go and vote in, but elections that the party has. So he will get those delegates. He just doesn't have them yet.
Right.
But I believe that they're accounted for in the numbers that we're showing you, the final numbers, not the numbers for the individual state where they're still not allocated. So look, overall, great news in terms of the numbers, a little bit bad news in terms of running out of caucuses eventually. Just putting that out there. But there is one other thing I wanted to talk about. So the media, in reporting on his big win, I think that objectively, overall, they have been willing to say what is abundantly clear: he had a great night. And they're calling it Sanders Saturday, and they're talking about his momentum, and that's necessary because it's true, because you saw it in the numbers right there. But there is one thing that the media is doing that I don't think anybody understands, except perhaps the people who run CNN. They're trying to portray these wins as confirming what they've always known,
Yes.
that he can only win in white areas and rural areas, when these places are anything but that. So this is what Chris Moody said on CNN. These caucus states, largely white and rural, are the type of places Sanders traditionally does well, even though, again, we had no polls, and I don't think he predicted it. In order to win the nomination, he must replicate this success in other, more ethnically diverse states that hold primaries, as he did in Michigan last month. I also saw somebody tweet, you actually might have retweeted it, a Hillary staffer tweeted out, Hawaii, diverse? It's only 2.5% black. That's not the only form of diversity that we have in America, and I would think that a Hillary staffer would know that at this point. Hawaii is, in fact, only 25% white, making it the least white state in the country and the only state without a white majority. Alaska, at 67% white, is less white than 44 other states. But according to CNN, these are largely white. Largely meaning 1 out of 4. It's amazing that they're able to do that. Now, Washington is slightly more white, but still not as white as a number of other places. For some reason, when she won Iowa barely, she wasn't tainted as only appealing to Caucasians. Yet when he wins in some of the most diverse states in the entire country, oh, this just fits the pattern. Nothing to see here. You can move along. He should probably drop out, by the way.
But at least they, they put the caveat in there with everything that, hey, we're big donors to Hillary Clinton, so take everything we say with a grain of salt. We're bought and paid for. We're part of the problem that Bernie Sanders is fighting against, that corporations run everything. So we're going to tell you that right up front. Hillary won, by the way. And even though she lost, when is he going to quit? It's gotten so bad that the New York Times actually wrote an editorial about it, how stupid pundits are being, and that hiding behind the veneer of when are you going to unite the party? It's time to unite the party. Hey, guess what? Anybody's going to beat Donald Trump, okay? Don't worry about that. People are worried about Donald Trump. Anybody you throw up against them is going to beat Donald Trump. Hillary will beat him, so will Bernie. So stop this bullshit about coalescing. We got to get behind.
Save our chances.
Fear. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Don't worry. We can win. All right. You can put John Edwards could beat. Right.
Except viewer marriages.
There's two Americas.
Exactly.
There's
maybe
America
one of them he can win.
For guys who cheat on their wife. Well, anyway, the point is, what I'm saying is that there are three kinds of Hillary Clinton voters, right? There's the people who don't understand what the biggest problem in politics is today. And there's the people who do know that, but they don't care. And then there's the third kind who are voting out of fear of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
All of those three things are sad.
And it's bizarre that your fear of Donald Trump would lead you to vote for her.
That's crazy. So we have to stop neoliberalism. All right. So if we get Hillary Clinton gets elected, things don't get better. Things still get worse. And in fact, again, what she's going to do is split the natural opposition to bullshit neoliberalism policies, which are just conservative policies, corporate policies, spearheaded by a Democrat. So don't freak out about oh my God, we might lose it. We're not. No one's losing to Trump. Ted Cruz still might beat Trump. Don't worry about it. Okay. And by the way, they're going to get rid of him. He's not going to make it. Okay.
Yeah.
So my whole point is stop supporting corruption out of fear and start fighting corruption for a change. See how it feels.
Yeah.
And the least you should do is stop shaming people who are sick and tired of what's wrong with politics and are willing to stand up and have courage. Because it takes courage to change things. But if you don't have courage, at least stop trying to shame me, because I do have courage.
Yeah.
And I want to fight of what's screwing up our political system, but you don't want to. So you're one of those three things. Nobody ever says, I'm for Hillary because of this policy. No, I've never heard that.
They might, in more vague terms, say because she's always been for women and kids or something.
Yeah, that's
vague.
vague.
But if it's the actual policies that drive you, then you would simply go one step further and support Sanders, who is stronger for those policies.
Correct.
California just passed a $15 minimum wage, which we're going to talk about in the second hour. Hillary thinks that's going too far. That's too liberal for Hillary.
So
Clinton.
there are parts of the country already ahead of Hillary Clinton,
liberal.
the things she wants to try to do.
Yeah.
We've blown past her.
Yeah.
Right?
And that state has caught up to Bernie Sanders, thankfully.
Yes.
In terms of what he said. Overall, I agree with you. I'm less and less concerned about Trump in terms of his chances in the election. Like I listened to Cenk and I agreed with him for a long time, but he's a bad candidate.
Cenk,
and he's complaining about attack ads now. He hasn't gotten any actual issue-based attack ads because the Republicans don't want to attack him because they largely agree with him. He will be destroyed by either Sanders or Clinton.
So people stop worrying about that and stop hiding behind that veil of we got to unite, and you're disloyal somehow, or you're not being. Somebody said, you're going to value purity over pragmatism. And I'm like, it is much more pragmatic to support corruption out of fear. That's very, and it does take courage to stand up to corruption. I'm going to go ahead and fight it. I'm going to fight corruption.